Hello and welcome to the Squeaky Wheel podcast. We speak with leading influencers about policy, industry and more across cycling, walking and all other forms of micromobility. My name is Phil Latz and I've been squeaking about various activities for over 40 years.
And I'm Irene McAleese, co-founder of the cycling technology and data company CSense. And we're on a mission to help cities transform for more cycling and micromobility using data. Today, we're excited to be talking with leading safety expert, Dr. Havez Alavi. Hafez has a passion for making our lives safer when we travel. We'll be asking him about two key events during the first half of his life that helped to inspire this passion. Havez was born and raised in Iran. Having already completed a bachelor's degree in civil engineering in Iran, followed by a master's in transport engineering and planning, Havez then migrated to Australia and did a PhD in road safety and injury prevention at Monash University. Based in Melbourne, Monash's Accident Research Centre is the largest and most respected of its type in Australia. After a distinguished career spanning state, federal and international government-funded authorities, Havez created his own consulting firm in 2020, which he continues to run today. Havez, welcome to the Squeaky Wheel podcast.
Thank you very much, Irene and Phil, for having me.
I know Irene is itching to nerd out and start with some data-related questions, but firstly, would you mind sharing about two incidents in your earlier life in Iran that helped spark your passion for road safety?
For sure. So I'm a very energetic and passionate man in general. So imagine as a kid, I was even more hyperactive, more curious and more outgoing. I remember the first time there was an engagement party, I sort of came out of the party for a second and I was sideswiped by a motorbike. And this is in the neighborhood that, they were having this engagement party. And it was, I remember the chaos. I don't remember anything about the pain or the impact because I was very young. I was potentially 5. The next one I remember very clearly. I was around 11 and I was crossing the neighborhood road. It's like 40, 30K road. And I was hit by a car going 40, 50. I remember I was catapulted in the air. I hit the asphalt. Again, I don't remember the pain, but because, it was so quick. But I remember, I was really breathless and pain and the panic kicking in. And those two events, really etched in my mind. And later, when I started, doing my studies and then finding jobs and finding my passion, subliminally, I was drawn towards safety. And the third event that I want to mention that I was sent to a crash scene as a part of my first job as a crash analyst, and I saw, I have to mention it, I saw beheaded bodies in a car, and that was it. I was 21 and I said, no, this is not happening. This is not going to happen under my watch. This is my career. This is my life. I'm going to stop this. So.
Wow. That's so moving. Oh, Havez, thank you for sharing that. It's interesting how it's something like that can impact you and stay with you. Actually, my husband, Philip, was also hit by a car when he was young while riding his bike. And the driver said, sorry, mate, I didn't see you. That phrase.
Yes, Missy, yeah.
Yeah.
Something like that can really transform people's mission for life.
So what motivated you to migrate from Iran to Australia?
So there were several factors. Obviously, I wanted to see the world, and coming from a developing country, the opportunities were not as much, both politically and economically. Also, I knew that I wanted to continue my studies in road safety and injury prevention, and Monash University Accident Research Centre was on my radar with fantastic research and amazing researchers. And I was following their work for a while. And then I applied when I was here and I got accepted to do my PhD. So my motivation to emigrate were political because, I really wanted to live in a free country, economic and also academic.
No, quite understandable.
We are super excited to announce the Squeaky Wheel podcast is starting a new long-term partnership with Turn Bicycles. Turn and the Squeaky Wheel podcast are a perfect fit as we share the same values and goals when it comes to seeing more people riding in our cities as part of our ever-improving active transportation networks. So in each podcast from now on, you'll be hearing us talk briefly about Turn.
Yes, Irene, I was chatting with the guys at Turn and they pointed out that while most cargo bikes are rated to carry over 120 kilos, common certifications like ISO 4210 or EN 15194 weren't designed to test bikes for that kind of load.
Wait, so what you're saying is that there's no real cargo bike test?
Well, there is, but only one. It's called DIN 79010 from Germany, of course. It's the only true cargo bike standard for testing higher load ratings. It also tests braking strength and simulates real-world stresses, like hitting a deep pothole with an overloaded bike.
Okay, so better that test happens in a lab rather than in the real world when you've got kids on the back, right?
Exactly, and that's Turn's point. If a bike claims that it can carry more than 120 kilos, but doesn't have DIN 79010 certification, it's fair to ask, well, how safe is it really? How reliable? Because without that testing, you just don't know. I've also watched a video of you where you mention a particular meeting after you've done your PhD and you were working, I won't say who with necessarily, but you were working in a government-related job and you had a meeting with an Australian politician's advisor, and that was a catalyst for you leaving that relatively safe government career and setting up your own consultancy. So what happened in that meeting?
So in this world, we have exemplar politicians, like, in my opinion, Barack Obama, or Michael Wood, the Minister of Road Safety in New Zealand, or Lee Waters that you interviewed from Wales. So if you put these exemplar, potentially in the minority politician aside, the majority of politicians have a certain attitude and mentality, vote-driven, populist. I don't want to sound cynical, but we have a little bit of work there. So the incident that you mentioned was on the back of us in Victoria, and it's not just me, a group of, at the time, 120 people across the Transport Accident Commission and the Department of Transport, finding ways to do innovation for cyclists. So for the first time in the history of Victoria, we were proposing the protected cycle lanes at intersections, the Dutch style, and we had done the due diligence, we had designed them well, we had talked to the community, we had all the evidence, and we took all of this to the minister's office to discuss this as an innovation and a new way of saving cyclists and provide mobility for them. And the feedback, it wasn't a feedback, it was a backlash. It was a backlash of verbal abuse and calling names and sort of really grilling me for potentially costing them votes. That shook me to my core. That didn't really sit well with me. Obviously, in that situation, the political sort of representative didn't do the right thing. At the same time, I'm a firm believer that we need to find ways to reach out to them. So over my career, I have been learning how and in what way to deliver the message to them for it to be palatable for them. So it's very easy to point the finger out to politicians, to community, to lack of funds, to all the other factors. But I think we as practitioners, we need to become even smarter, even more convincing. And that's why people like Lee Waters and the way that they play with the rules of the game and the mechanics of the system to get things done, I really cherish them, and I want to, like us all as practitioners, do more of that.
Yeah. I mean, what you're saying there, you had all the evidence, you had the academic arguments, you had the proof that this was the right thing to do, yet you hit this sort of blockage of like, there's no political will to carry this through, because they know that when they try to take that message out into the ground, if it means taking road space away from cars, for example, that there's going to be some backlash and they're just not prepared or not brave, not feeling brave enough to be able to take that heat politically. What you're saying is, how do we, in the transport professionals, actually manage that and almost expect that you're going to get that kind of reaction, and then know that we have to come together with a different approach and different strategies, and we have to be smart about how we get this through.
Exactly. And the way I suggest that we can be smarter, and I'm tapping into 3 areas that are very effective in road safety or any sort of kind of public health policy: advocacy.
Yep.
We are learning more and more that if we teach and put some of this evidence and tools out there in public, and we educate public to be the voice of our wisdom, if you will, that talks to the ears of politicians better. That's one way of doing that. Potentially trials in areas that potentially the local member or a local politician is more acceptable and they can use it for their own sort of local sort of, purposes, can be another way. So, and the other thing I want to mention, the third party, is communication and engagement. Many of us are really good with the technical language, with the evidence, which can be really dry, sometimes not really cutting through the noise.
Yeah.
And I really want to mention that we need to find the right and simple language to deliver the evidence in a way that Joe and Jane on the street identify with and they can take it on. Very similar to what's happening with some of our political lives as well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because what I've heard a lot of cities talking about is the importance of storytelling. If you are doing a pilot, you still need the data, you still need the evidence, because it becomes part of the storytelling, but it's about how you put that information across, not in a dry, boring way, but in a way that captures people's imagination and knows which levers to pull that are going to, make an impact.
100%.
Yeah.
Jill Warren said, let's focus on why. And why is the story? Why is the language? Why is when you talk directly, not to the frontal lobe of people's brains, but in their inner human side of their brain? And I think that's something that we need to do more.
Yeah, yeah. It's really powerful if somebody said that, if you say to a community, well, actually, do you want to have for your children less air pollution and a nicer place to walk and ride, rather than we want to put in a bike lane in your street? So the 2 different ways of approaching a story or proposition can come across. I think that's really great. I understand that that's very tied to your mission. And actually, I think, is that why you do those lovely infographics on your LinkedIn, where you make some of the statistics quite colorful and attractive to look at?
Yeah, 100%. I have several hobbies, as we all do, and one of them is understanding about science communication. And I really like people like Professor Lawrence Krauss, a sort of astrophysicist with the biggest brain. But when he communicates about this stuff, it's so readily available to a sort of layperson. So I'm trying to sort of be a communicator of road safety in a language and a way that talks to as many people as possible.
Great. So thinking about road safety then, how does Australia stack up in terms of road safety compared to other countries? Who's out there leading this stuff, and where do we sit in amongst all of that, particularly in regards to vulnerable road users, in inverted commas?
Irene, for decades, we were leading the way, Australia and New Zealand, in terms of coming up with the most advanced sort of progressive policies, with seat belts, with speed cameras, with alcohol, breath tests, and all of that. But now we're falling behind the majority of the advanced world. If I give you a number of facts and figures, if we compare ourselves to Sweden or Norway or Denmark or Germany or the UK, who are a bit better performing, we are twice as likely to die on the road as an Australian compared to any citizen of those countries. Now, that is for every aspect of road trauma. If you double click on, say, pedestrians, As an Australian, we have 4 times more risk of dying on the road as a pedestrian compared to a Swede or to a Dane.
Wow.
So we are actually really faring bad. And also in the last couple of years, as you have noticed, the statistics of road trauma is worsening. But we also need to remember it's not just about the numbers, it's about the actual pain and suffering of more Australians get quadriplegic, paraplegic, getting acute brain injuries, losing family, losing their partner, marriages getting shattered, businesses lost, relationship between father and children or mother and children ruined, attachment broken, communities ruined. So the massive pain and suffering is growing. And the horrific thing is we know how to stop it. At the moment, technically, we know how to stop 80%, at least 80% of fatal and serious injuries in Australia. And we're sitting on our hands at the moment.
If we were to improve safety in Australia and elsewhere for cyclists and other vulnerable road users and micromobility users, what would be the general role of micromobility in road safety and in active travel promotion?
That's a great question. So one of the ways that we can deal with road safety issues is by moving people from using vehicles or cars to using like more active travel modes like cycling, walking, micromobility. And that does that in several ways. First, by moving people from cars to cycling or walking, there will be less cars on the road. We call that exposure management. There will be less cars. Also, the moment we increase the number of pedestrians and cyclists and micromobility on the road, it creates something called safety in numbers. Because there are more, there people are aware of them, the culture changes. In your conversation, with some of your conversation on this podcast, you talked about the role of culture and how some of these, I think it was Lee Waters talking about changing the speed changes the culture, changes the interactions. So by creating that mode shift, we're changing the culture. Why a Dutch person is more aware of cyclists? It's not because they're better humans. It's because they see more cyclists on the road. So mode shift manages the exposure better, changes the culture, and potentially allows your politicians and community to value them more. For example, the budget of City of Melbourne came out recently, the draft for the next few years. And you look at it, potentially less than 2% is allocated to active travel. And micromobility is totally ignored, fully ignored. Why is that? Because not many people see them out there on the road.
Yeah.
They can ignore them.
Yeah. That's so interesting that you use the word valuable, because actually that was going to be my next question, because I've heard some people in the cycling world really don't like the term vulnerable road user. And then I've heard this other term starting to come out more recently where people are trying to reframe that as the valuable road user. You're nodding. You've heard that as well, have you?
Was it you, Hafez? Were you the one that should?
No, I have been sort of a culprit. I use vulnerable a lot. And the reason for that was initially, because you need to remember there are transitions. So initially we needed to establish that they're vulnerable because nobody even thought about them as any vulnerability. We needed to establish that they are vulnerable. We need to think about them. Now that we have really established that, we can move to the next phase and say, no, it's not their vulnerability, they're valuable. It's your problem as a car-dominant society. I'll give you another example, which is very interesting. So we used to say, we're going to close this street to allow it for children, for example, to walk and cycle.
Yes.
We're not saying that anymore. We say open streets because we're actually opening up the streets.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, it's really important. Reframe it all.
Language.
Yes. So what are the barriers that are stopping us from getting where we need to be for cycling and micromobility?
For sure. I believe the first one is culture and demand. I would really like people to start demanding for more option as a citizen. There are many people that have accepted that a driver has a right to options and clear roads and well-maintained road, no potholes, no congestion, and they find it as their right. Not many people actually think about walking and cycling and micromobility as a right as a citizen. Mm-hmm. So people like myself, I sold my car more than 10 years ago, intentionally trying to be more active. And now I'm quite vocal that as a ratepayer, as a taxpayer, as a okay citizen, I need to be given options. So that's first thing, culture.
Yeah.
Can I continue and add to that?
Yes.
Because culture is very important. Then culture translates itself to political will and political support. And these are going really hand in hand. So one of the reasons that we're not getting as much love for active travel is sometimes that fear, that anxiety and concern in the political sphere that if we do this, this is going to kill our government or kill my voters or whatever. So that's the second thing. And the result of these two is that you're going to get governments that are less likely to invest in these areas. As I mentioned, the budget comes out for the city of Melbourne, and a minuscule part of the budget is allocated to active travel. So if you're not building culture, if you're not bringing your politicians along, if you're not investing in them, how come you want to change the system?
Yeah, there's actually a big dispute in Brisbane where we're based at the moment with the Story Bridge, which is going to, well, they've actually said that the bike lane has to close because the bridge needs repairs, and the motorists are fully able to keep using the bridge, but the cyclists are expected to just not be able to use the bridge for several months. Yeah, but it just sort of talks to where the priorities lay in the city with moving the priority on moving people in cars rather than other modes, a little what you were saying.
100%. And I think the other thing I want to mention before I forget that, two concepts of legislation, standards, and capability. There are many practitioners out there that they were brought up in a uni culture that was car dominant. So we need to start and change those capabilities from university side. So we need to teach people about active travel in uni. Then when they come to the market, we need to have guidelines that are active travel orientated. And then we need to have legislation that support these. So it's very easy to design for cars and design well for cars. But speed management, many hurdles on your way. Designing for pedestrians, cyclists, many hurdles on your way. So we need to think about them as well.
Mm-hmm. So what about data in terms of, you said it's easy to design for cars. So there's lots of data about cars, right? And a lot of cities using more and more sort of connected vehicle data, for example. I mean, what data are we missing for micromobility? And how could we get a better understanding of things like sort of near miss and trying to be more proactive? I mean, obviously, you're aware of the work that CSense has been doing with the Transport Accident Commission, a little bit using swerving and braking data. Could you elaborate on kind of where you maybe see gaps in data and what could be done to help in that regard?
For sure. Oh, this is a fantastic question. I think if you're not counted, you're not counted, or you don't count. So what I would say, there are two parts of the question. One is like the data on existing patterns of human behavior. One is the data or forecast of a behavior that is latent. So I think at the moment we're not really collecting good data on active travel to build the case. At the moment, I'm working on a project with Astros on keeping people safe when walking, and we have established a really good data set for pedestrians, and we're taking that framework against the available data, and there are lots of gaps in terms of how we collect data on pedestrian activity and pedestrian safety. So we don't have that. But it's more than that, because latent data is about a demand that is not met or not provided for, hence people don't use it. or for example, the famous example that if you don't have a bridge, you're not going to have any pedestrians because nobody's going to swim around the river. So I would say lacking data is both in terms of existing patterns and latent patterns. And we have known that, especially for vulnerable road users. Can I give you a sort of a more, robust example? Think about road trauma, road accident, fatal and serious injuries. This data for cars and car occupants is collected really regularly and really well oiled. But when you look at the underreporting for cycling crashes, cyclist injuries, pedestrian crashes, pedestrian injuries, we have lots of gaps in the system and evidence-based underreporting for these. Sometimes they say up to 70% of some of these incidents are underreported. That's why I think we have a fantastic opportunity for technology to come in and fill the gap for us. And C-Sense is one of the examples of many examples that we can use technology to collect near misses, some of those surrogate measures or interim measures that can tell us what's going to happen in the future in terms of, in this case, safety or activity.
So what concrete steps can improve the post-crash data collection and sharing that could strengthen the evidence base for this kind of e-scooter as well as the bicycle safety investments?
For sure. The first step would be linking the current available data sets based on a good framework. So we need to establish a framework of the data needs for, say, micromobility propagation. So we need to understand what data is required. So that's the first step. Then we need to take that framework against the existing data and link the current data set, because usually data sits across a variety of platforms. For example, road safety data sits with police, with Department of Transport, with hospitals, with TAC, and sometimes the linkage between them is not existent in some states. So know the framework, establish the linkage, then do the gap analysis, what is missing. Then that's where investment comes in. And investment, we don't sometimes need to put a lot of money in data collection. Sometimes we can use technology to save money. Maybe we can achieve the same goal and same objectives, not going and collecting and creating data system, but using technology or AI or any other ways. Sorry, 3 steps: framework, linkage, gap analysis, and close the gap as cost effectively as possible.
And that first point on knowing what data you want to collect is very important, because I'm thinking in the UK context, when the e-scooters first started coming in, I think there was a sort of a catch up there because there's Stats 19, the police reporting, if there was an accident or collision, it didn't record whether it was on, say, a privately owned scooter or a shared scooter. So it was just recorded as an e-scooter. And then actually some of that granularity would have been quite useful to understand the source of some of the injuries and how the robustness or not of the type of e-scooter may have played into the type of accidents that are happening. But maybe, the thought wasn't there at the time to ask for that information. After a while, it becomes apparent that they do need that information.
100%. And Irene, you inspired a thought in me, because maybe I want to make a differentiation between hard data and soft data, or whatever you call them. So imagine about community attitudes and behaviors, which is very important if we want to establish something is working or not. Like Lee Waters talked about 75% of the community being for or against speed management in Wales, and how those facts and statistics are very important for decision making. So when we're thinking about what data is required, some of it is communities' behavior and attitude. Very important to collect them. I'll give you one of them to give you a really good picture of that. Monash University, I try to be correct here, I think it's Lauren Pearson and Ben Beck and the team, they did a survey of people's readiness to jump on bike in Victoria. And I think 78% of them said, we're ready to do that as long as you provide good infrastructure. Imagine the power of that data, that 80% of Melbournians will use bicycles if we provide for them. Put that in front of your politicians. Put that in front of City of Melbourne. Very important data as well.
Yeah, that's true. That it's not just the hard data, it's the soft data as well. Both need to be looked at together. Yeah, absolutely.
So Irene mentioned e-scooters a minute ago. So let's just ask you a few questions specifically on e-scooters, which are very controversial around the world. And you hear all sorts of stories, Paris banned e-scooter sharing and so on and so forth. I was surprised to hear you report earlier on something I saw that e-scooter crash data shows roughly 93% of e-scooter injuries involve single-user falls. So where should we target countermeasures to stop this?
So that's a very good question. Thank you, Phil. The first time I bumped into that information and data, I was really shocked as well. And that tells us how the system is working. So there are a number of observations here. First, e-scooters are potentially new for a majority of public. So we need to go through a phase of people using them and learning them, how they work, and we provide for them. At the same time, like any other road safety issues, when we look at the problem, we need to look at it from a systemic perspective. What does it mean, systemic? Because we use it a lot, systems-based or systemic. So when an injury occurs for a scooter rider, that can be because of the scooter rider's capability. It can happen because of the e-scooter itself. It can happen because of the road environment. It can happen because of the separation we have provided for them or not, or the speed of the road. Or the injury can be exacerbated if we don't reach out to that person as quickly as possible to provide for them care. Like this is post-crash care. So when we're thinking about those injuries, many people, unfortunately, are really quick to blame the rider. That's not a systemic way. That's actually really a politician way of blaming and not doing anything. So when we look at those injuries, we look at them from a safe system perspective. We would say, A, you need to provide a really good road system for them, potentially separate them from car, provide an environment for them to really be safe on the road, which is allocation of space. We need to help them to be safer through education, not drink riding or not drug riding, so that needs some education. Also, we need to bring down the speed of roads for their speed to be safer. So if they're hit by a car, they're safer. The other thing that is about the design of the road, if you have really sharp corner curbs, those 90% that hit the road with their shoulder or clavicle or head, they're more likely to be injured. So we need to change that part of the system as well. So after you've done all those parts, then we can go and blame the riders. So I think we need to look at it systemically, change the system for better, and then keep our riders accountable.
What about the design of the scooters themselves? Is that something you've got any opinion on? The actual geometry and safety of the scooters?
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to my friend and colleague, Professor Jeremy Woolley from CASA in Adelaide. We were in conversation when we were talking about how we can make e-scooters safer. So the first thing is stability. Can we do a better design for a better stability of e-scooters? As I mentioned, many people jump on e-scooters on travels or they don't do them regularly, so it's more stable, it's good. It's about their power and speed. Potentially, managing the power and the speed will be effective. The other thing that we can help riders with is geofencing. For example, if we know that they're going to go through a really busy area and conflicting with lots of pedestrians and elderly and children, maybe we can geofence the e-scooters to drop the speed. So there are a number of ways that the mechanics and machinery of e-scooters can be improved for safety of the riders. And I want to emphasize this. We need to help them. We need to do things for them before we keep them accountable and blame them or all that.
Okay. I'm going to broaden out this last question.
Sure.
Not just e-scooters, but cyclists, pedestrians, all micromobility, all the valuable road users, as we're going to say from now on.
Yes.
If you could implement only one evidence-based measure tomorrow to curb injuries and deaths within 5 years, something that would have a big effect fairly quickly, what would it be and why? If you had to choose just one thing.
Speed management. I would drop the posted speed of urban settings in any land or country to 30k. I have a few things to say about that. A, speed management is the most evidence-based factor in road safety. The evidence behind speed management and its impact on reduction of deaths and serious injury is the strongest evidence we have in road safety. It's shown to work really well across the majority of road safety advanced countries. Munich has 80% of the urban areas at 30k. Netherlands, 70 to 75% of the whole urban setting is 30k, and they are twice as safe as we are in Australia. For vulnerable road users or valuable road users, 4 times safer. So one silver bullet would be speed management. However, we can do even more than that for valuable road users because they are valuable.
Hafez, we're coming to the end of the interview. Is there anything that we haven't asked you yet that you would like to add? Here's your chance.
For sure. First, thank you very much for doing what you're doing. It's a great way to bring knowledge, passion, and learnings to our community and our peers. I want to share this with my peer heart to heart. Do more communication and engagement with your community and stakeholders. Because technically we know what works. We know speed management works. That's not what stops us. What stops us is engagement, bringing them along, changing the culture. So one thing, do more comms and engagement.
Love it. Love it. Thank you so much, Hafez. It's been so fascinating to speak with you. And I think that's a great message we could all get behind.
Thank you, and pleasure talking to you and Phil.
Yes, Hafez, thanks for squeaking. What a wonderful, passionate communicator, Irene.
Yeah, I mean, he was such a buzz to talk to. And actually, I wish that everyone's listening to this on audio, but they didn't actually get to see the fist pumps that he was doing in the air in a very excited way at the end. So it's just so wonderful to speak to Hafez. He has so much passion and enthusiasm. I'm sure people could hear it in his voice, but if you were watching him physically, he was sleeping around in his seat at some points. Definitely not a dry academic there. Although he has obviously an academic background.
No, and he had some great one-liners like, if you're not counted, you're not counted.
Yeah.
And so forth. Now we'll roll on to the session that we always finish every podcast with, which we call What's Up? So what's up, Irene?
So what's up for me? The first thing is we're starting a new project. I think the press release hasn't come out yet, but I have had permission to talk about it exclusively on the squeaky wheel. But it actually follows on nicely from what Ez was talking about, because we're going to be doing some data collection off e-scooters in Helsinki, working with Tier.dot and some pilot project there, which they're very focused on Vision Zero and using data to be proactive. So we're super excited to be starting that project in Helsinki. What else? We're in the finals for the Velo City. So C-Sense will have a representative at the Velo City conference coming up in the next fortnight now. So we're in the finals for the Smart Pedal Pitch, which is really the sort of startups that are involved with cycling data, I think was the theme this year. So there are many, many applications and they got down to 8. So the 8 finalists get to go along, get a free ticket.
Well done, Irene. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. It's nice. It's nice to be in the mix and nice for the representative from C-Sense to go along to that. I won't be myself doing it this year, but I can watch from here. And lastly, my abstract was selected for the AI TPM. So we spoke with Kirsty Kelly.
Mm-hmm. Yes, indeed.
Yes. So they have a conference, the AI TPM, which is a transport planning sort of society in Australia, have a conference coming up in September, and I'm very excited to go down and see Adelaide for the first time. So it's going to be in Adelaide this year.
You've never been to Adelaide before?
Never been to Adelaide, so it'll be my maiden voyage there. So that's coming up. But not as exciting as the travel you have planned, Phil, which I'm sure you're going to talk about.
What a segue. All right. Well, I'll reverse the order of what I was going to say to flow on from that. And when this podcast is released, I'll be halfway through a European trip that will start with Velocity in Gdansk, where, of course, I'll be in the front row watching the C-Sense presentation, followed by Micromobility Europe in Brussels, and then Eurobike in Frankfurt. And between these three events, I'm planning to do lots of riding, experiencing the local transport systems, and meeting people in Berlin, Copenhagen, and Oslo. During this trip, I'm hoping to record brief conversations with people that I meet that we'll use for our July episode of the Squeaky Wheel podcast. So definitely looking forward to that trip, which, as I say, when this podcast comes out, I'll be halfway through.
Wow. That's some trip, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
very
really
exciting.
Very, very fortunate to be able to do such a thing. And
yeah,
you can never learn too much.
I mean, so many people are going to be so jealous. Velocity, Eurobike, and going to Berlin, Copenhagen, Oslo. I mean, stop it. Just stop it. You're totally outdoing my WhatsApp.
I'm only going to tease you, Irene. No other reason. No other reason.
Well, I hope you're going to wear your Squeaky Wheel podcast hat as you're touring around all of these
the hat
venues.
will be glued to my bald head.
Yeah.
Don't worry about that.
And if anyone's out there and they see Phil lurking around in any of these conferences, do go up and talk to him and see if he can get a slot on the Squeaky Wheel podcast.
I'll even take some spare hats with me too. So exciting news. We have hired a brand new podcast promotion coordinator named Tiani Chilemi. She's got an amazing resume. Most important, she's a seasoned e-bike rider, and she's supportive of the goals of the podcast, but she's got a resume and client list that you wouldn't believe. So you'll see us becoming more active on social media over the coming months, and really looking forward to her expertise helping boost the Squeaky Wheel podcast so we squeak that little bit louder. And then finally, we've already got our guest for August booked in. I won't name him just yet, but I've just excluded half the world's population because it's a he. But someone who can bring us a unique first-hand insight on what's happening with active travel in countries where we normally hear a bit less about. We tend to be very Euro-Anglo-centric, but this person has first-hand experience working in Pacific Island nations and China. So really looking forward to that podcast in August. Well, thanks for listening through to the end of this podcast. If you've liked what you've heard, please subscribe via your favourite podcast platform. We're planning to release one new episode per month on the third Thursday of each month.
And if you've been enjoying listening to the Squeaky Wheel podcast, we'd really appreciate it if you could leave us a review or a rating on your preferred platform. And you can also find out more about the Squeaky Wheel podcast and contact us directly via our website, squeakywheelpodcast.com. Thank you so much. We love to hear your feedback.
Yes, thanks everyone. And don't forget to squeak.